It feels like we've been waiting forever to finally get a Halo adaptation onto the screens in some way, shape or another. This project seems to have been in development hell for years. People like Steven Spielberg and Neil Blomkamp have been trying to get a Halo film or a Halo TV show done since as long ago as 2012 with Halo's Landfall teaser. And since then, the idea has kind of faded into obscurity, muddled by rumour and behind-the-scenes turmoil. Finally, a TV show was settled upon. Showtime then cancelled that. It was picked up by Paramount as their tentpole feature, and just when we thought things were going swimmingly, we then get the news that the two main showrunners quit before the season even begins. And that doesn't even cover the fact that just before the show was released, they came out with the biggest bombshell of all, which was the quote from one of the showrunners: "We didn't look at the game. We didn't talk about the game. We talked about the characters and the world. So I never felt limited by it being a game." It's small wonder then, at the end of that, now that we have finally finished watching Halo, the TV series, that it is one of the biggest atrocities ever committed to the screen.
I think the quote is really telling. It implies that there's an inherent limitation with it being a game, which I guess is true in some ways, but there really isn't that much limitation with the Halo universe, given that the Halo universe is a franchise that's made up of a lot of its own original sort of imagery and iconography, but also borrows so heavily from so many other things, particularly Alien, even like some 40k stuff, and a lot of other sort of classic sci-fi imagery. It's really weird that they saw it as a limitation when Halo isn't really all that original. It really is just its own unique flavour of sci-fi goofiness. That isn't much of a limitation because there's already so much media out there that is just its own flavour of sci-fi goofiness.
Yeah, I mean, well, before we get into the actual inherent quality of the show, the idea that they've kind of deliberately eschewed any influence, not just from the games, but from any kind of outside media created from Halo, because you obviously have a series of very well-received books, the likes of The Fall of Reach, The Cole Protocol, a bunch of really well-received books. I've only read one of them, but I've read The Cole Protocol. It was fantastic. It was really interesting. There's loads of different aspects of the universe that people
and lore
have
for days.
Yeah, people have already explored it in interesting ways that don't have to rely on characters like Master Chief. But I completely understand why you would. As a showrunner, you have to think, what will put bums in seats? What will get people to actually watch this show? And if you don't include a character like Master Chief from the games, you're less likely to have a successful money-making product.
It's a safe option.
But the problem with Master Chief as a character is he is a very robotic, stoic super soldier.
Yeah.
It makes him great to play as this kind of invincible killing machine in the games. It makes you feel powerful. But when it comes to a story revolving around character and development, you basically have to create someone entirely different, which is clearly what they've done with this show.
Basically, before we go into specifics, I think I agree with what you're sort of broadly saying in that I think the biggest problem with the show is Master Chief.
Yeah.
Not necessarily his inclusion. I would probably prefer a show that was a bit braver and decided to, you can include Master Chief, but like maybe not focus on Master Chief as your main character, which to me seems like a really obvious choice to make. You could do something like Rogue One maybe, where you have this iconic character and he shows up for like 10 minutes and people love it.
They have already done something similar. Before or around the release of Halo 4, they did a little show called Forward Unto Dawn.
Oh yeah.
And
I
again,
watched it, but...
I watched bits and bobs. I didn't delve into it as fully as we have with this. But yeah, that is Master Chief's role in that very much.
Yeah. But I think what's really damning about it is that this TV show sort of semi-coincides with the release of Halo Infinite, which we've both played the campaign of. And it's really stark how effective the characterization of Master Chief, something that the show really, really tries to do and really just continually shoots itself in both feet over and over and over again with a needler. Whereas Halo Infinite does, weirdly, as a video game, you'd expect it to be less subtle, more sort of brash and kind of narratively inept about, like in most video games have bad stories, or you generally have just a lower
like a thinner amount of story often.
Yeah, but and often like the narrative element always will come second to the gameplay because the gameplay is just more important. But Halo Infinite, one of the best things about the storyline, and it is not perfect by any stretch, I have plenty of complaints about Infinite, but one of the best things about Infinite is how effectively it manages to characterize Master Chief
100%.
and like show a side to Master Chief that has some emotion that is very different to 1, 2, 3 and I guess 4 and 5 as well.
Yeah. Here's the interesting thing with the direction the show seems to go. It hasn't focused on the games very blatantly. That's, again, not a problem. What the problem there is that often the decisions they make are worse than the games. It's fine, I think, to make a decision if you're kind of enhancing it for a more cinematic experience. You're taking creative risks. I mean, Peter Jackson did plenty of tweaking of The Lord of the Rings.
Well, he was also attached to a Halo project.
Was he also? Yeah. Jesus Christ. But, you know, many of the changes he made, including, you know, like, off the top of my head, Arwen being the person that rescues Frodo, but rather than Frodo rescuing himself.
He even cuts out the whole scouring of the Shire.
Right, he does. Yeah. There's risks he took in order to streamline it, and make it more visual. You know, I could pull better examples out if that's what we were here talking about. But ultimately, what this show completely fails to do is replace the influence of the game with anything worthwhile of its own.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, Master Chief in games 1 through 3. He is essentially just stoic. He's a robot. He just kills, right?
He has like little quips of humour, and that's about as much characterization as you get.
He's not completely devoid of emotion, but he is a man on a mission. He's got a job to do.
He purposefully has limited characterization.
Yeah. And I think something that, you know...
And that's why he's likeable.
Yeah. And from 4, 5 and 6, they definitely try and bring more of that, more humanity into his character, particularly through his interactions with Cortana. Now, you can argue for days about how effective 4 and particularly 5 are at doing that. But like you say, Infinite, I think, does the most deft job of not only making it feel like a development of his character, but doing it in a natural way, where he's not just suddenly like tearing up and like bleary-eyed, taking his helmet off and like crying into the heavens. He sort of still maintains that stoicism.
I was actually shocked in Infinite at how emotive just looking at his helmet was at points in like certain cutscenes. And the storyline, while it's like not amazing or anything, it does actually have a sort of section towards the end that's all about questioning his own motivations,
his own morality,
and like what his morality is, and is it all about the mission and all this kind of fairly standard stuff. But it does it like in a genuinely kind of subtle and effective way, in a way I really wasn't expecting. So it's amazing that with the freedom that shooting a TV show has compared to a video game, where really their job is to link a number of gameplay set pieces up with a sort of storyline to go with it, and that is kind of like a feat of acrobatics in and of itself. A TV series can kind of do whatever it wants, relatively, and it's amazing how much they absolutely fumble the bag in terms of Master Chief and pretty much every other character as well.
100%.
I think I could easily say this is one of the worst first seasons of a high budget TV show I've ever seen in my life.
Out of the gate, the story they choose with Chief is based upon his sort of backstory in and around his creation, essentially. The fact that he's like an orphan or stolen from his family and then sort of trained and augmented and experimented on from a young age. Now, this is kind of an established, accepted part of his story, even for himself in the games. To my knowledge, he knows that that's happened to him, and it's because of his kind of, they got him early on. He doesn't care. He's like, he's programmed now. This, they make it into this huge series long reveal, and out of the gate, he is just completely unhinged. Like, it feels like we've arrived at a character 3 or 4 seasons deep into meeting him. He's stoic
for maybe the first half of the first episode.
Like for the first 15 minutes. Yeah. As soon as he touches the keystone, he goes absolutely ballistic. It's as far opposite.
He's like the Joker. He's basically Master Joker.
How?
Because he's just like, his life is just falling apart. It's just like the absolute opposite of the character we know from the video games. He's just like having an emotional breakdown at like any and every opportunity. Just like my childhood. Oh, I want to fuck this alien. Oh God, what am I doing? He's literally just the Joker.
Yeah.
And it's just like so weird.
I not thought you were going to bust out a Master Chief Joker comparison here. But like the point being, he is so completely polar opposite right out of the gate. We don't really get an opportunity to contrast the new Chief that we're being told he's, oh my God, Chief, what's happening to you? You've gone insane. Like, we've never had
no dynamics.
We've had no time to establish him as anything other than a crazed lunatic. And that kind of sets the template for many of the characters through the show. And I think for me, that is its core issue, outside of just, I think it's poorly plotted and the dialogue is poorly written. The characters all make nonsensical choices a la sort of classic cheesy horror films
Yeah.
in order to progress the plot.
It's also just a show where it feels like there are a lot of ideas in a pot, and you can always see the rewrites happening in front of your own eyes.
Yeah.
So, like, at first, the implication from the first episode is that it's going to be some kind of buddy show with Chief
God.
and this young girl called Kwan.
Yeah.
And the show sort of progresses in that line for 2 or 3 episodes, and then diverges. And
Just
then,
abandons her.
yeah, and then they become 2 plot lines, and then one is dropped at like the 7th episode completely in favour of the other, and it introduces a villain who is then sort of, I guess, spoilers, very quickly written out.
Yes.
In a really sort of abrupt and strange way.
Yeah.
And does a lot of setup for really sort of abrupt conclusions.
Yes. It's unbelievable to me that you would have professional writers mapping out a series and you have a character that's seemingly so instrumental.
Yeah.
Because what it does is, in a broad and kind of basic way, but it's still a necessary way, her character and the opening action set piece on the planet of Madrigal helps kind of set the dynamic between regular human existence and the UNSC.
Yeah.
This kind of huge military force that's not only fighting the aliens but also oppressing.
Yeah, kind of morally questionable.
Yeah, morally questionable sort of company, which I'm fully for, and again, that does actually tie into the games. That is very much present backstory in there. And her character is very skeptical of Chief when he arrives. He's sort of, helmet on, robotic and stoic as we know him to be. And her reaction to him is of distrust until we have this sort of heart to heart. So essentially doing away with the kind of dynamic immediately, right? Because the whole point is you have 2 opposites, 2 sides of the story, and then...
Well, that's essentially what the games do with Cortana, right?
Yeah.
You have someone who's a bit more upbeat and quippy.
Yeah.
Not really like comedic relief, but a bit more light-hearted to go with. It's like, bread and milk.
Right.
Yeah.
They essentially resolve the issue of there being this kind of divide between them, this distrust, by saying, oh, actually, I was never that guy.
Yeah.
First episode, like within the first half hour.
Well, it's weird, isn't it? Because it kind of feels like, now that I say it, you have Cortana to contrast Chief's stoicism and sort of ruthlessness in a way. And then the game, Cortana's not involved until like maybe episode 3, which is about where they drop Kwan. So was there some? It almost feels like there might have been some kind of weird writing switch around they had to do.
Maybe.
One of the big feelings I get from the show, I guess this is more of an aesthetic thing. Just to be clear, we've both played pretty much all the games, right?
Yeah.
We both played all the games. We're both really big fans of the series. So obviously we come in with a level of like fan expectation. But the show doesn't feel very Halo-y. And it feels like a lot of the stuff they include in terms of like sci-fi imagery, one of the things like in the 2nd or 3rd episode where they go to this sort of asteroid planet that's all linked up by cables, which is sort of interesting, but it feels like it's from a completely different show. It almost feels like this is some generic sci-fi TV show that would have gone, completely under the radar on Netflix, that they've found this script and they've just sort of gone over rapidly sort of control F'ing and adding in Halo keywords.
It's a bit of a Cloverfield paradox conspiracy.
Yeah, it genuinely does feel like that to me.
Yeah, no, I can see
and
that.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
I think more cynically it's probably done the other way around. I imagine that in order to make a show like this more palatable for a general audience, you don't want to just throw in Halo iconography. So I didn't have a huge problem with the meteor kind of
No, I don't have a
thing,
problem with
the
it. It
asteroid
just doesn't really feel...
I know what you mean, but I think the thing, sort of coming back to the Madrigal thing, I think that was very influenced by The Mandalorian. Like, it feels so ripped out of that.
But it also feels influenced by the Landfall short film.
Yes. Oh, right. Yes, of course. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, particularly the action set pieces, or in fact most of them apart from the final end episode one. This is another thing. There was kind of a weird aesthetic tangent that this show took. And one of the few that I actually don't have a problem with is the violence. Halo is not known for being a gory game.
No, it's violent, but in a pretty tame way.
Yeah, it's very cartoonish. And I think that a lot of that comes from like the plasma weapons and things like that. You never see like a gory open
none of them
wound.
are like 18. I think they're like 15 rated at most.
You see blood spatters, but you don't see like people being eviscerated.
Some of the stuff with
people
the
being
flood
melted.
is violent, but it's not.
Yeah, but it's kind of violent in like sort of conceptually violent more than it is sort of physically gut-wrenching. the opening of this, you just have people being melted with plasma and like stabbed through the chest and like ripped apart, like aliens with their fucking face, their jaws blown off.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of some of the violence you get in District 9, where he has like the alien weapons and he's like dissolving people with them. That made for quite like a blast out of the gate, you know. It was quite like not a dazzling first impression.
It's a little bit jarring.
It's jarring, but it made an impression.
Yeah.
It didn't just like hit, it wasn't just sort of meandering and dull out of the gate, but it quickly becomes that. It quickly becomes apparent they have just chosen to pad this out with constant, meaningless, tedious conversations. Like sort of the annoying bureaucracy of something like the council meetings in the Star Wars prequels. The one thing that no one gives a fuck
That's
about.
like 90% of the show.
Yeah, that is. It's genuinely, it's like arguing about the morals of using clones, the political ins and outs of
because they're basically the Halo Council.
Who runs the Spartans? Oh, where should we go now? Like, what should we do? Now, I don't have a problem with that kind of inner turmoil, inner politics going on. You can do that well, but the writing and the dialogue that goes along with it, as well as the pacing issues, where it feels like a continuous, like you go like 3 or 4 episodes, and it feels like it's just people talking and walking around. It's like I thought this was a Halo show.
Yeah, I mean the writing is just absolutely dire. I don't think there is like a single sort of compelling moment throughout this whole show. I think the crucial thing is it is just so boring. I couldn't even really recommend the show to someone in a so bad it's good way. It doesn't have that quality.
No.
And another interesting to note is it feels so cheap because there are like a few moments in the show that feel really expensive. I can remember maybe 3 or 4 big action sequences throughout 9 episodes.
Right.
Which is mental. I mean, it's a Halo TV show. They should be going for at least like 1 an episode, surely.
Yeah.
Like, that's what the people came for. And sorry, just to quickly go back to the aesthetics thing. I don't really have much of a problem with some of the stuff they included. My bigger problem is like the stuff that they just don't include. So like, one of the biggest things about Halo for me is like big fuck off Halo architecture.
Yeah.
It's like some of the most iconic shit in the game. From Halo 1, 2, 3, all of them have this like really classic kind of art style to them. This like huge like Forerunner like architecture where it's all very clean, has this specific sort of sculptured look to it. And like there's none of that throughout the whole show. And there's barely even any Covenant stuff. At all. The Covenant are like barely present. And when they are there, they're done badly anyways.
Well, yes. Well, they
Jackals don't use energy swords.
Well, there's that. Yeah, there's annoying inconsistencies like that. But the grating thing is that they clearly didn't have enough faith to have a character like, say, the Arbiter.
Get Keith David in.
Keith David would be fantastic. He's a class actor. But also, the character of the Arbiter shows a level of depth to the Covenant and the struggle that is very much absent from this.
They don't even speak English in this, which just doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
But if you're going to try and appease audiences, why are the aliens not speaking English?
Yeah, it's baffling that they don't get them to speak English, because it's just yet another layer of disconnect between like what we know from the games, what we know has worked well in the games, because not only does it give them some level of humanity, it lends them a level of humour. Like one of the most sort of entertaining things is like sort of running into a new nest of enemies, and there's like grunts like freaking the fuck out,
running around,
and running back to their like elite masters because they're afraid that the demon's going to kill them and stuff like that. And they clearly cheap out of this decision to the point where they don't even have like a sort of main enemy like villain, like alien villain. They have to get this this woman called Makee, who's been taken in by the Covenant at a young age, and so she's like essentially a Covenant version of Chief. She's like brainwashed, she believes the propaganda.
What's amazing about that is that they did that because they were like, no one's going to be able to relate to an alien.
Right.
Which is amazing, considering the Marvel films, like Thanos, just amazing.
Yeah, true.
Like there's a character in Guardians of the Galaxy called Rocket Raccoon, who is a raccoon. Right. Which is just amazing that they thought that was a thing. But also, if they were struggling of like, oh, we need Master Chief to work in a TV show, we need him to bounce off of someone that isn't just Cortana. The Arbiter. Yeah. The games have already done it for you.
Already done it for you.
I'm not one of those like sort of toxic video game fanboys who's like, I can't believe they didn't follow the games exactly. I'm like, I'd way prefer adaptations of things to do something a bit different and change things to just make it work. Like Lord of the Rings is a great example because that changes loads of things, and in my opinion the films are actually much more entertaining than the books for what they are. And the Halo show, it seems so reluctant to even throw a bone in terms of like the weapons people are using, like I said, the architecture, any characters, any sort of nuggets or vehicles, any of the things that people liked about the games. And the people who play the games are going to be primarily the people watching the show anyways. So just from a marketing decision, it's so baffling to me. Do they really think that this is going to hit such a mainstream audience, that the fans are going to be like a smaller percentage of the audience? Right. I just don't believe that.
You know what, that does seem to be the cynical process, like the thought process behind the scenes. I mean, to be clear to anyone watching, they do have some of the weapons and vehicles and things like that in the show, but it's more about like the inconsistencies. Like we noticed when we were watching like weapons, all of the like rebels on the planet, they just seem to be using like AK-47s and shit.
And people are just using normal pistols, like a Glock. It's like
what? Surely in a future that would be like remarkably archaic technology. That'd be like in a modern film. Like a fucking what if in The Godfather one of the characters just brought out a fucking musket?
It comes out like a sword and shield. Like
It's like, yes. It's not that it doesn't work. It just doesn't feel like consistent, or it doesn't feel like particularly well thought out. They've got all these amazing vehicles and they barely use them. You've got like a bit where he does the one fan servicey bit where he boards a Banshee in like the mid-series climactic battle, which was sort of fairly well orchestrated. Thing is, there's nothing about it is mind-blowing. It's just that it was one time they threw us a bone.
When I was at that point of the show, I was just taking anything I could get.
Right, that's it.
What's also frustrating is like the props that they do have when they do show up actually look pretty good. I think especially the armor looks fucking amazing.
Yeah, I think they did.
Like all the Spartan armor just looks fucking great. Like it looks like there are shots where it's CGI, but a lot of it's practical and it looks really fucking good. But then the rest of the show is almost like fighting against that.
Yeah, and I think the way they depict Forerunner stuff is way less intriguing to me. Like you were saying, you got all these huge Forerunner installations, and I get this series is about finding the Halo, which, spoiler, they never fucking do. They find part of a map to the Halo never gets completed, and they literally, one of the characters says it out loud. One of the prophets goes, "Oh no, the map is incomplete." Like, thank you for pointing that out. But they basically just sort of strip all the Forerunner stuff away to just being this like one little keystone and an occasional like little geodes in the ground that have
There's
been,
no
like,
sense
covered.
of mystery to it.
Yeah, they're just
like in Halo 1, you have like a great sense of like, what is all this?
Yeah, you wander into a cave that's clearly artificial, and then it's just this sprawling underground labyrinth.
Well, that second mission of Halo 1 is so good they literally made Infinite basically entirely based on that mission.
Right, yeah.
And that should have been at least an idea for where you take the show.
There's just so little in the way of mystery around this show. They choose to boil a lot of things down to very safe, easy concepts. There's a rebellion on a planet. There's a lot of inner turmoil and politics and people just talking in like brightly lit rooms. It just feels like they took all the safest, easiest to produce options. And then at the end, when there is a kind of like a sense of alien spectacle where they're on a planet, I forget what planet they're supposed to be on. They go up to the temple. There's like, you can't see the ground, so it's like clouded beneath them.
Feels like a set.
It feels like a set. It's all empty, essentially, until like waves of enemies start descending upon them. What it feels like is someone's created a Windows background and they've had a fight on that.
Yeah, pretty much.
It feels like a sort of updated Xbox era version of the Phantom Menace fight that takes place on the Windows XP background. It feels empty. It doesn't feel like any connection between what we've seen up until this point. The kind of geography of the scene doesn't matter because it's just kind of a square. It's just a square and people are walking around.
There's not real much scenario. They turn up, they start shooting, more aliens come, and they all sort of generically get injured for a climactic finish.
It's such a tepid way of ending the show, and it's the one instance you're actually going to really go whole hog on like some alien shit, and you make a really pathetic excuse for a finale.
One other thing to mention is the show, despite sort of not really including any sort of really obvious things you can include from the games to just sort of make things work a bit, it does include like a bunch of new characters as well, outside of Master Chief.
Christ.
So I guess like the big one is the girl Spartan with the pink hair.
Kai.
She's terrible. She's absolutely terrible. Uniquely unlikable. She only really exists to sort of continue this really boring sort of rhetorical question the show keeps asking of, is it right that we made Spartans? And then it keeps going, no, it's wrong. And then just
that's such a valid point. They answer their own question within the first couple of episodes.
In the first episode, the question comes up, it's like, this was bad.
Yeah, we shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, and it's like,
but was it really? Oh man, I'm wrestling with my own inner turmoil out loud.
It's embarrassing. And then like, who else was named?
Well, you've got the other two very flat playing Spartans, which behave far more like Master Chief does than he ever actually does.
Oh, I can't even remember them. Really.
I don't know their names.
And then you also have Captain Keyes' daughter.
Yes.
Who is also terrible.
She only has one facial expression.
Yeah.
Every time she walks into a room, she kind of goes.
She's sort of like she's constantly smells something a bit bad.
It doesn't matter what the scene requires of her. I feel pride. I feel discontent. I feel nothing. Like it's just the same shit each time.
I've seen loads of people be really down on the Kwan actor, who I thought was actually relatively better considering what she was given than a lot of the other actors.
I think it's a bit of a Rose Tico situation where hatred for the character overrides into hatred of the actress.
Which is very unfair.
No, I think it's completely unfair.
Yeah.
I don't think that sort of thing holds any merit because I think
genuinely, I think she's probably one of the better actors on the show.
Singling her out in a sea of complete dud performances just feels completely unnecessary to me.
Well, what did you think of what's his name? He plays Master Chief.
It's a difficult one with Pablo Schreiber's performance because
he has the hardest job.
He has the hardest job. He has to sell this script. I don't think he does a completely awful job. Honestly, I think something about his performance did at least sell what he was going through. I just found what his character was going through to be completely frustrating,
which isn't his fault.
No, and the writing is beyond his control. I think I certainly think he did a better job than 90% of the cast.
He probably is the best element of the show.
I mean
the lady who plays Cortana is pretty good, but she's just Cortana.
I mean that's another point, is the dynamic between Master Chief and Cortana is really frustrating in the show. They just hate each other. Well, he hates Cortana. And there's loads of sci-fi mumbo jumbo about them having. Oh my god, hang on. Before we carry on about Pablo Schreiber and the performances, I've just remembered how they create Cortana.
Oh, where they melt a clone. Really weird.
Oh my god, why? Okay,
I don't know why they overcomplicated it. Like when it's in the game.
It's not about why didn't they do the thing from the game? It's more, why have you replaced it with this completely ridiculous bullshit? They have to flash clone, which becomes its own moral quandary, which seems to involve making a clone really quickly that they then dispose of really quickly. They literally create a clone of Dr. Halsey, secrete her brain into a hard drive,
and then they melt her.
Turn that digital organic combo thing into a chip that they then ram into Master Chief's spinal cord.
No, it's actually in him as well.
It's like in his brain, which is bizarre. Again, it's not that they can't do it, it's just why?
Why
like, what is it?
I mean, we figured out why they changed it.
It comes into the end, but it just seemed, unless they do something, they haven't done anything with it in season 1 to really justify the decision.
Well, no, we figured out why they made that decision, and it's because there seems to be some kind of per episode mandate that Pablo Schreiber cannot be wearing the helmet for longer than like 5 seconds.
He never wears the helmet.
And in the games, Cortana's a chip in the helmet.
Oh, of course, right.
Therefore, I don't know why you had to melt the clone, but we now know why injected into the brain.
Right, of course. Yeah, no, you know what? I can't believe I missed that. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Anyway, that horrible plot detail aside, I didn't hate the ex-Spartan who is the Shocker from Spider-Man Homecoming.
He was okay.
He was alright. He seemed like someone who actually knew what he was doing.
He felt like he was from a completely different TV show.
He did, but he actually felt like a real actor. A lot of the people here felt like, TV actors.
What did you think about Halsey? Because it seems like the people making the show, it feels to me Like, they really weren't interested in Master Chief, and it felt like he was a big inconvenience in their writing of the show. But what they really liked was the stuff about Halsey.
Right.
Because so much of the story is about Halsey, who is a really interesting character, though she doesn't really actually feature that much in the games.
No. Well, I mean, I guess it makes sense. Touching on the creation of the Spartans and the person that created them makes a lot of sense.
Yes, yeah.
I think the way they handled her just made her look incompetent.
I thought as a performance she was alright. Like,
yeah,
she was never terrible.
I think with her performance, I found it much harder to draw a line between what was written for her that was bad and what she was doing with it that was bad.
I think the problem was the script sets her up as basically the worst person ever.
Yeah.
Which she is.
Yeah.
But then also wants her to be like a girl boss.
Yeah.
And you can't really have both.
It really cannot settle on a tone
No.
of how we as the audience should approach this character. And which again makes all of this sort of political feuding in the background not only, boring, but kind of difficult to follow.
Yeah.
Because tonally we don't know. Are we entering into subterfuge? Are we watching kind of Game of Thrones playing the hand behind the throne kind of thing, the power? Or is it just an evil woman? Are we following the other characters cracking down on her? Or how are we supposed to approach this?
Yeah.
You can have all of those things going on at once. A well-written show can balance those things, balance those aspects, and maintain a consistent tone, a consistent theme to it. And I just don't think this show does it. I mean, you could go through and unpick every single scene. Part of me, the OCD part of me, really wants to kind of sit down, annotating screenshots and go, all right, this is where they fucked.
Yeah, I mean, literally, so many scenes in this show are just so fundamentally just broken on every level, and it is hard to sort of remove my knowledge of the games watching it and completely ignore that, because at the end of the day you can't. It is based on a video game series that it was basically the first video game I ever became truly obsessed with.
Yeah.
So it's it's difficult to do that, and I don't think you can realistically ask your audience to do that. Well, there's two scenes I think in this show that are just completely fundamentally broken. One of them is the one where Master Chief threatens to kill Halsey by locking them in an airlock decontamination thing. This is sort of him at his most deranged.
Yes, which is impressive because he starts off deranged.
Yes, he is in full Joker mode, and he's got Halsey locked in a decontamination chamber, and he's gonna kill her, and he's literally just freaking out.
The countdown goes beyond one.
Yeah.
It goes all the way down, and only then does he.
And it's just so. I was just watching it, and I was just I don't know who this character. How is this even remotely based on this character I know from this series? It didn't make any sense. And not only that, it was all based on this really crappy rhetorical question the show's constantly asking, is she the bad guy? And we already know that she is the bad guy. But then he doesn't kill her. He's just freaking out. He's kind of doing it for the wrong reason, because he's just so emotionally fraught.
Well, he wants...
Cortana is telling him not to do it.
Yeah.
It just felt completely fucked.
The idea of that scene was supposed to be, will Halsey using Cortana override Master Chief in order to save her own life?
Cortana eventually sides with Chief, right? That's my whole thing with it is basically Chief, part of his premise as a character is he's supposed to be sort of stoic, which he isn't. He is supposed to be he's not indecisive like that. He always kind of has a very sort of blunt force plan that he's going to do.
Right.
And this kind of mind gaming stuff just seems so completely out of character. And then the scene's so bad it went viral, that goes so completely against everything that anybody knows about Halo, is the scene where Master Chief has sex with an alien spy and implicitly seems to cause the fall of Reach by clapping cheeks with this alien. Which is astronomical. Not only is Master Chief having sex, which is mind-blowing as a creative decision in terms of how out of touch you can be. And I also saw a tweet that the kind of thing I would normally just kind of dismiss and see as maybe a bit silly, but I actually thought about it. I think I actually completely agree. Master Chief should be asexual. He should fully be asexual. It completely works in the canon. He is asexual, and I could see if you were an asexual person who likes his video games, you'd probably be really fucking pissed off by that. Because he is, right?
Yeah, no, I suppose I don't really consider it.
No, neither do I.
But yeah, no, it makes sense. I guess...
And not only that, he's thinking with his dick so much, he has now potentially caused a genocide.
By, revealing a bunch of information. Yeah. I mean... they've written a completely different character at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's just not the same character. He has similar backstory, but the character is completely different.
Yeah.
There's the whole Chosen One shit as well.
Oh my god.
Like, why do writers constantly feel the need to hammer home like this? In order to have
It's always
grand
terrible.
stakes in anything, there has to be some kind of prophecy. Yeah, it makes no sense. Halo has grand enough stakes without you having to make Master
It has
Chief.
the grandest stakes
Yeah,
you can basically have.
yeah, and it does it in like a sort of metered out, unfolding way in the games. You gradually piece together new bits of information until you realize the scale of the problem. It basically hits you out with maybe episode 2 or 3. No, I think episode 2, where like the weird bonkers guy on the asteroid, he goes, you are the chosen one.
Oh my god, yeah.
And then they discover Makee is the other chosen one, so that's why they have to bang to like unlock their force powers or whatever and see the future or see Halo in a dream. What the fuck is any of that? I mean, my critical brain just kind of switches off at that point. I go, what the fuck?
It is genuinely hard for me in my head to piece together what happened in the show.
You know what? In a weird way.
Should we talk about the ending?
Yes, but briefly, I do just want to talk about the one thing I do kind of like, and I think you disagree with me on this. And bear with me here, because I think a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this. I kind of like the concept of the character Makee, in so much as examining a human that has been corrupted by the Covenant isn't an inherently bad idea. I actually think there's a lot of merit to it. I don't like the fact that they clearly used it as a substitute to replace there being any kind of actual alien threat or actual alien characters, which I feel is really necessary. I mean, obviously you have the prophets kind of chiming in, but they don't really have an influence. Yeah. They're more kind of, again, power behind the character of Makee. But the fact that she has this kind of tortured journey from spy, out and out villain into kind of this changed, morally ambiguous character is way more complex than I think anything they do with any other character in the show, and including Master Chief. And I think, weirdly, they're trying to obviously have mirror characters, right? She is the mirror to Chief. Yeah. And I think they showcase the concepts behind both characters way more effectively with hers than with his.
I actually agree. I think that the idea of her character is really interesting. I don't think it's done well, obviously.
No, but what I would say is it's done better than most other ideas are in the show.
I think it's something that could work if other things in the show worked, which they don't.
No. And it's weird because where so much of the show is way too painstakingly slow, her character progression is too quick. She comes in hard out of the gate. She has the weird energy sword fingernails, that stuff. She does a Trojan horse where she pretends to captured. Yeah, and then she lets the hunters into the ship. And that's kind of a cool scene where you've got the hunters have separated into their individual little worm creatures.
I'm just glad we didn't get to see them as is, but I mean that was a kind of wacky bit.
It was the most stylistically divergent thing that they did in the whole show. Oh my god, this is a sort of borderline horror scene going on. Yeah. So I appreciated that moment. But yeah, then suddenly she's gone from doing this, murdering a crew of innocents to, now I'm banging Master Chief and
it seems great. Whereas with Chief, they immediately change his character, and then he's basically
doing the same shit.
He's crying in his childhood home, having existential crises and banging an alien. It's just constant. With her, she's almost sort of very bland, and then all the development happens at once. Right, so, exactly. So I guess the ending happens. You have this giant CGI fight scene, which I've seen people praise. You're all deluded. It's ugly. Yeah. It's awful, and you should all feel ashamed for it.
As I said, Windows background type shit.
Yeah, and then Master Chief is sort of semi-lobotomized with Cortana, who takes over.
He supposedly dies.
Which is amazing, because it's almost like the show acknowledging, oh, you know all that character development we did? That was a mistake. We're sorry. And it's because I've seen the theory, I think you told me the theory, right? Yeah. Where it's that is where Stoic Chief comes from, because he was actually this guy, and that now he's going to be Stoic. And if that's true, that is amazing. Yeah. Because it's literally the show in the final episode, the final moment of the final episode going, psych.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and I guess this kind of ties into the foreknowledge we had of the showrunners quitting ahead of it
Yeah.
airing. If you want to be conspiratorial, I guess it could just be fan theories or whatever, but it does kind of feel like they deliberately have set certain things up in that final moment in order for them to essentially do a clean slate for the second series. It already has been confirmed for a second series, and I hope to God that at least I mean, I doubt we're going to be watching it, but at least for like diehard fans who really, really want something of quality to watch, give it to someone who knows what they're doing. Get them to follow that conspiracy to its logical conclusion.
That's the galling thing, right? Is everyone wanted to like this.
Yeah,
but it's so hard to like this. So here's my question. Season 2 is already happening, unfortunately. How do you fix it? And because for me, it's a difficult one. Because the show, the season 1 is so laden with creative mistakes that it's going to be difficult to unfuck it narratively. But I personally think there's a few very easy aesthetic fixes. And just like do a bit of fan service. Have a warthog chase. Actually use the guns. Have some like stuff from the games.
Right, well, okay. Pacing wise, like you said, have some kind of big, medium-sized climax every episode.
Yeah.
Have some kind of cool fight. It can just be a fist fight. It can just be like...
And if you're going to do a low-key episode, have a dynamic.
Get the guy who did all the fucking John Wick films and all the choreography for that. Get him to do the choreography for any hand-to-hand shit, any fight scene. Because that guy knows how to do gun violence in like a really dynamic and interesting visual way.
Yeah.
Where often so much in Hollywood is just like hide behind wall, shoot.
Yeah, that's a good shout, yeah.
You know, you want some
He
dynamism.
could probably make... I bet that guy's played Halo. And I bet he'd be like, I've got some cool ideas to make this look like someone playing Halo.
Just get him on a Zoom call.
Yeah.
You don't even need him there. Just get him to give you some ideas. Return to Stoic Chief. Keep the fucking helmet on. The whole helmet on and off thing is not just, fans. It's in the games. He never takes his helmet off. It's not adhering to the games. No, it's about what it says about his character. He's kind of inhuman to a point. He's something other than human. He's been altered beyond an ordinary person. And so that's kind of resembled in his mask is his true face. It's not only that we wouldn't recognize Chief if he did take the mask off, it's that the character has worn the mask so long it is who he has become.
It's like Darth Vader, right? Darth Vader is the mask until at the very end he's not.
He's Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, he's Anakin Skywalker again. And that's why that moment in Return of the Jedi is, in my opinion, like really powerful. Because like when he takes the mask off, he's just like this old fucking dude.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. And like clearly, Master Chief is kind of like the good guy Darth Vader. He's just a guy in armor who's really powerful and cool.
Yeah.
But he's like a good guy.
Yeah, I guess it is as simple as that.
Yeah. And like there is enough you can make a good character out of that.
Yeah.
It is maybe a bit more challenging to make a whole TV show where like someone's character is really important. Like it has to be quite three-dimensional to get through 9 hours of television if you don't have like at least a somewhat interesting main character.
Yeah.
But there are ways to do it, and I think they've fumbled the bag.
Okay, so
and you send the next thing you do is you call Keith David's agent.
You call Keith David. You absolutely get the arbiter involved. And yeah, Keith David, he might be getting on a bit, but he just needs to voice act. That's all he needs. You get a proper series-long villain where you really feel like a genuine connection between the two of them. I think that's always important with villains. You need to have them meet early, meet in the middle, meet at the end. You need to have that progression. Yeah. I think you should buddy Chief up with someone. He should have Cortana as well, but he should have...
What do you do with Quan?
Completely ignore it. It never happened. Never fucking happened. Like there is just, look.
I think it's too broken. I know it feels harsh saying that because I genuinely think people overfocus on it. I think genuinely she's one of the better actresses. Her plotline sucks. It's not really her fault.
I get
why. I agree.
I get why people hate the episode because it's like, let's have a whole episode of this Halo show without Master Chief in it and completely diverge the
almost
story.
No Halo stuff in it.
Because, like we said earlier, it. Not only is it just meaningless meandering, closing off plot lines, but it shows a laziness in the writing process where they couldn't tie the two things together. Why is she teaming up with Diet Chief, the ex-Spartan bloke, when she could be with Master Chief? It could have been tied into his arc. It could have had some importance there. I think having a sidekick who isn't horribly obnoxious, maybe an ODST or something.
Johnson's
a bit too caricature.
I feel like okay,
you can have him in it, but I think he's too caricature.
I feel like also one thing they need to do is like have the series set over maximum 3 different settings and have most of it just be Chief on a planet running around doing stuff with the squad of Marines, maybe like Johnson in the background and Arbiter trying to hunt him down.
Right.
Because I just feel like there's a good show in there.
Yeah.
Like genuinely, like just him like running around because no one cares about this politics shit.
He should have a wisecracking ODST buddy.
Yeah, why not?
Like one of the, was it Buck?
Yeah, have the like they
one
clearly
of the guys from ODST.
Yeah, because they don't care about the games. Just have the squad from ODST show up.
Yeah,
like they're already fun characters.
Yeah, you want people with some liveliness to them to counterbalance Chief, but then Chief can still be the badass. He can have some development. You can do the sort of stuff that they did in the games in 4 and in Infinite. I'm not going to talk about 5. That didn't happen. You can humanize him in a more naturalistic way that doesn't feel completely counterintuitive to what they've already set up with the character. Also, get to the fucking Halo. Get on the fucking Halo already.
Find the Halo. Win the war.
First episode. Found the Halo, won the war. Done.
Straight up.
Like, just... How are you going to dick tease the Halo for the whole opening series?
It's called Halo!
It's called Halo, and you don't even find... Not even the Halo, but the map to Halo. You still haven't found the whole map. It's a broken map.
Oh my god.
Are we going to get to Halo at the end of Season 2?
No, Season 9 we get to the Flood.
Oh, fuck off.
Like, my god.
I thought you were going to say Season 9 we get to the Halo. So yeah, I think that just about wraps up our incredibly deep and emotional feelings on Halo. This is the first TV show we've ever reviewed, and as you can tell, it is taken the life right out of us. This is why we don't watch 9 hours worth of content, because regardless of the quality, we are left beaten and broken at the end of it. We still lie in wait, awaiting a successful, well-made video game turned TV series turned film. There are very few. You could list them on a few digits.
If someone in the comments says Sonic, I'm going to lose my shit.
Yeah, don't you dare. I mean, I would at most argue the first Tomb Raider film as a guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
And that's about it. We're still waiting for good quality video game, film, TV content. This was us going in, I mean, admittedly skeptically, but really, certainly for me, part of me was really hoping that this would be the turning point, the change.
At least fun.
Because it was like the source material was so excellent, the characters are so fun. Surely they can do something with this. And they did not just a bad job, they did as much as they could to completely fuck it up.
Yeah.
It's just a complete mess.
It's almost like if you ask me, like, what is the worst version of this show? They made that.
Yeah, they have made to sound. Oh god, I don't want to say it. They have made the dark timeline version. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. We have not enjoyed making it because we have suffered.
I've enjoyed sort of the confession box. This sort of ramblings, but the actual process of watching the show was difficult.
This has been genuine therapy, really.
Yeah.
So, thank you for being here for me.
It's all going to be all right.
Yeah, I mean, season 2's coming out, so it's not going to be all right. If you've also enjoyed being here in our little therapy session, please consider liking and subscribing. If you are an avid Halo fan and you are pissed off at us for these mean comments, please give us a dislike.
That does it.
Peace.
Find the Halo in the wall.